Hey guys, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to get into the rock history of Foreigner, of the band. I picked them just based on their bumper crop of material. Certainly a vast catalog of hits, and albums that did remarkably well. They had the backing of Atlantic Records, which at the time was the standard bearer and probably the biggest record company on the planet. So they were in, that partnership was about the best the band could have hoped for. Now the formation of the band's interesting. They were formed in New York City by Mick Jones. He was the guy that got the ball rolling, so to speak. And he had a brief stint with Spooky Tooth and had also worked with Leslie West, which I was surprised to find out because I didn't know that Leslie was a guy that worked with other guitar players. But at any rate, when the Leslie West project fell through in 1976, the story goes that Mick Jones was stranded in New York City and was tasked to put a new project together. And it was through Leslie West's representation that he was able to get his foot in the door with Atlantic and secure that deal. As the story goes, they ended up with 6 members. 3 of them were Americans, 3 of them were English guys. So there was the name Foreigner and how that came about. Mick had said, regardless of where they were touring, half the band would be foreigners. And so that quote brought about the name, and the band was formed. They had auditioned 40 to 50 vocalists for the band, and were really having a hard time finding someone to front the band. And Mick Jones had remembered digging through his vinyl. He found an album by Black Sheep that he had gotten backstage at a Spooky Tooth gig, and it was given to him by Lou Gramm. So he was digging around and came upon that and remembered listening to it, and looked Lou up, and the rest is history. Lou Gramm became the vocalist for Foreigner. So along with Mick Jones and vocalist Lou Gramm, they started out a 6-piece, and their debut album featured Gramm and Jones, of course, Dennis Elliott on drums, who after he left the band became a sculptor and is still a sculptor to this day, which is interesting. Al Greenwood was the keyboard player. Ed Gaglardi was the bass player. Unfortunately, he succumbed to cancer in 2014. And Ian McDonald, who was a multi-instrumentalist, enlisted and credited for a number of instruments throughout his tenure with the band. And unfortunately, Ian McDonald is no longer with us, having passed away in 2022. So, pretty sobering, guys. These rock legends are definitely fading away, and it's a real wake-up call to love what you're doing and get it done. So at any rate, in 1977, their debut album came out, spawning hits Feels Like the First Time and Cold as Ice. Those tunes were ubiquitous. They got constant radio play. So these guys came out of the gate and hit the ground running for sure. And the album did remarkably well. And they spared little time getting around to their second record that was released in 1978, Double Vision. Again, this one had its share of hits. Hot Blooded, which became their flagship song. You might argue Double Vision was a hit, and Blue Morning, Blue Day received heavy, regular radio play. So the first two albums were monster home runs, and really put them in the driver's seat. And certainly Atlantic was pleased with them. So they had a lot of artistically, they had a lot of leeway, and they had a lot of clout. When you're churning out hits like that, the record company probably is more inclined to just get out of the way. And so Lou Gramm and Mick Jones just started penning one classic hit rock song after another. But of course, with a little bit of success, here come the malcontents in the band that don't understand their role and are pissed off because they don't get to call the shots. And you know what, guys? It's pretty interesting. How many times have we, and, correct me if I'm wrong here. Feel free to comment if you think I'm out of line. But so often you see this. It happened with the Eagles. It happened with Styx. It happened with Foreigner. That the core guys that are writing the songs and writing these hits start understandably calling some of the shots. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, yeah, we wrote 3 hit songs on the second record. We wrote 2 hit songs on our debut record. And so, yeah, we're going to say, let's do this, let's do that. How about you do that? And then the other 4 guys start complaining because the guy or guys that are writing the hits have taken a hold of the reins. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, write a hit song. Or, if you're not writing the hits, just be happy you're along for the ride. Yeah, and I don't get it. I don't get the thought process, and I digress here a little bit. But I remember an interview with Don Felder of the Eagles, and don't get me wrong, I'm a Don Felder fan. I think he's a great guitar player. But he was being interviewed, after all the strife with the Eagles, and he was fired and then came back and was fired again and all that. And I remember in an interview he was talking about, but he didn't understand why, when they first started the band, they agreed that they were going to be equal this and equal that. And I'm like, yeah, but Don, that was like 14 hit songs ago. Like, you think these guys aren't going to take charge artistically and financially when they're writing all the hits? I mean, I confess, guys, that I don't understand why guys in bands that have occasion to work with someone that's a little bit more artistically locked in to writing hits, whatever the case may be, however you want to phrase it. And then they just think that, well, hang on a second, this is supposed to be an equal 4-part, when it's a 4-piece band, it's equal parts, right? 25, 25, 25, and 25%. And I'm like, well, dude, this guy's writing all the hits, or these two are writing all the hit songs. I mean, how would, and maybe if one album, it was a fluke. But, you're talking about like 2 albums in Foreigner's case, where these guys are writing all the hits. And then, the other 4, or, maybe not all 4 of them, but enough of them start squawking like, well, hey, this isn't fair. Like, yeah, I don't get, guys. I've never understood why people have such a hard time with that. And I think in Foreigner's case, the first guy that kicked up a lot of dust was Ed Gaglardi, the bass player, because before the 1979 Head Games sessions even started, he was replaced by Rick Wills on bass because Graham had said Ed was a pain in the ass in the studio because he was pissed off and disgruntled, Lou had said in an interview, quote, he was a little headstrong and had his own ideas that weren't always compatible with what we were trying to accomplish. Ed was obstinate at times, playing the song the way he wanted to play it rather than the way it was drawn up. Mick often had to stop sessions to get Ed back on track. After a while, it became tiresome and slowed down the recording process, unquote. So, yeah, that's what you do. You know, you're 2 albums into your deal with Atlantic Records. They're selling like hotcakes, and you should be a dick in the studio with the 2 guys that are writing the hit songs. So if you look at Ed, his music career stops right after he was dismissed. So, like, dude, where to get you? Like I said, don't understand it, but Rick Wills, I'm sure, was delighted to take over for Ed. Can you imagine that call? Hey Rick, would you, we have a bass player that's not cooperating with our hit albums with Atlantic Records and our songwriting. So would you like to take over? How would you like to get that call? At any rate, 79 saw the release of Head Games, the cool album cover with the chick wiping her name off the bathroom stall. I always got a kick out of that. Album cover. Dirty White Boy was one of the singles released. Of course, Head Games was the other single that came off that record. So after Head Games, McDonald and Greenwood left before Foreigner 4. September 1980, those guys jetted and were dismissed. One reason for their dismissal was Jones's desire for greater control over the band and to be, the primary songwriter along with Graham. And Graham had said again on their departure, quote, we had reached a point where there was a lot of dissatisfaction. So at that point, they were down to 4 members. They were no longer a 6-piece, they were 4-piece with Graham and Jones steering the ship, writing the songs, and the 2 guys left apparently were willing to, take a back seat and just enjoy the ride. So they knew, they were abundantly aware, I'm sure, like, hey, look, we have a major record deal, Atlantic Records. These 2 guys are writing hits. They got the blueprint down. Why would I complain? But at any rate, they stuck around and reaped more benefit, because when Foreigner 4 came out, they just absolutely crushed it with that album. You look at it with a guy like Ian McDonald. He leaves the band kind of disgruntled. Of course, Foreigner 4 is about to be released. He's not going to be involved in it. It's an absolute mega hit. And he came from some success. He was with Robert Fripp and did the whole King Crimson thing before he joined Foreigner. But, after his dismissal, you don't see much. I mean, he went back into doing some session work and Steve Hackett, but, has to look back and think, man, a day. I shit the bed on that one. So anyway, in 1981, Foreigner 4 came out, spent 10 weeks at number 1. That's 2.5 months. It really shows you how different the music business is. Music business on, the highest levels, down to, guys digging around in the trenches. 2.5 months at number 1, shows, the culture of distraction that we have now was not as robust as it is today, back in 81, because people were more focused and more satisfied. It seems, for an album to be number one for 2.5 months is pretty remarkable. The hits off of that were Urgent, Jukebox Hero, Waiting for a Girl Like You. Waiting for a Girl Like You spent 10 weeks at number two as a single without ever getting to number one. And obviously you see all those lists. Rolling Stones lists this and that. Billboard's lists that. But, it was ranked as the 80th greatest song of all time. So, and I'm sure it rang the register. Ironically, that is where some of the well-documented strife between Graham and Jones started. Apparently, as the story goes, Jones got a new keyboard and was enamored with the keyboard, and that's where he got all the keyboard licks and all that softer side of Foreigner that Lou Graham wasn't really crazy about. I watched numerous interviews where Graham talks about his dissatisfaction with the ballads, that Mick had bought this synthesizer and was like enamored with these synthesizer sounds. Now all of a sudden they're writing these ballads, Waiting for a Girl Like You, then later on with I Want to Know What Love Is. But it's hard to argue. You can kind of see where that dynamic would be really tricky because you've got mega hits that are bringing in stacks of cash, but you're singing these wimpy ballads and you want to be doing Dirty White Boy. So I get it, but at the end of the day, everybody wants to make a living, I guess. The dust up between Jones and Graham is fairly well documented. Obviously, there's a lot of other things I could get into with Foreigner. Wanted to do this band because of just the awesome guitar hooks, the rock guitar, 101 with Lou Graham and Mick Jones writing these songs that are the perfect blueprint and really, really clever riffery and great chops. So Agent Provocateur came out in 1984, reached number one in the UK. The biggest hit single, I Want to Know What Love Is, another power ballad that I'm sure Lou wasn't thrilled with. Probably didn't mind the paycheck. The song topped the charts in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, reached number 3 in Germany. So, numerous countries, top 10 hit. That was Yesterday. Off that record, Agent Provocateur went to top 20 in the United States. They took a short hiatus and came back with Inside Information in 87, Say You Will, and I Don't Want to Live Without You, another ballad. And by that point, Graham was out the door. In 91, was replaced on Unusual Heat with Johnny Edwards on vocals. Came back for a short stint, but they never regained any kind of commercial success that they had certainly had prior. So I think their total at this point is 80 million records worldwide, 37.5 million records in the United States alone. Those numbers are probably continuing to grow. And of course, Jones is still out there with Kelly Hansen has taken over on the vocals. So they're kind of a tribute band at this point, with one original member. Apparently, unfortunately, Mick Jones, isn't doing very well. He has the Michael J. Fox Parkinson thing happening, and apparently hasn't even been at a number of the shows and is starting to miss shows, meaning there's not one single member left when you go see him. So would be kind of tough. I'm sure they do a phenomenal job, but it still would be tough to get super excited about that. So thanks for hanging out, guys. Appreciate you spending the afternoon with me. Foreigner, phenomenal British-American rock band with an enormous catalog of guitar riffery. Subscribe if it strikes you, and we'll see you in the next episode.